It is your buddy, Peace and Harmony, with you here today. Much love going out to all the beautiful, empowered harmonizers. And we're zooming in and focusing in a little bit more in depth on that great viewer question that we just got in. And that is, Peace and Harmony, how can I spot a psychopath? How can I find this out before I get involved or before I get into trouble with these types of people? And this is a great viewer question, because you really do have to have almost like a radar on when it comes to protecting yourself and getting involved with people. And a psychopath is particularly one who will ensconce or sort of shelter you and provide a feeling of a relationship, but really what is communicated is nothing but a persona. It's really important to understand that one of the characteristics of a psychopath, someone who has an antisocial personality disorder, who does not have a conscience, who also lacks empathy. These are some big loaded statements, but what does it really mean for you? If someone is violating boundaries, what does that mean? If someone is engaged in high risk behavior, promiscuous behavior, things that are displaying an attachment disorder. In other words, when people they present in a specific way, charming, you couldn't pick them out from a crowd. In other words, they can be very good looking, very intelligent, very handsome, very successful, beautiful, but how are you able to spot them? And so really, a lot of this has to do with being able to process what is in the moment and living in a state of presence, or present in that inner space that needs to exist and not be packed down with repression, suppression, defense mechanisms, self-doubt, and the brainwashing and gaslighting that confound and create and perpetuate a trauma bond connection with these sort of people. So when it comes to the how to, you have to remember that when it comes to relationships, in my viewpoint, it's very important to be able to experience a state of peace and present moment reality within your own physicality, within your own physiology, with your own be state. Because if you don't have this is where you're either, reliving the past or fretting about the future, and you're not really present. And so when you're in this sort of emotional roller coaster, which I would say a tremendous amount of society lives in, especially when they go to work, they're just trying to get things done. They're trying to meet a deadline. They're thinking about the future. They're worried about the past. They're reliving the past. They're not really in the present moment because they might not like their job. So either they're fantasizing or, dreaming about the future, which there's nothing wrong with that. It's a wonderful thing to dream and plan. Or they're reliving their past and they're in this sort of distracted state, away and out of the present moment, their full presence, their own awareness. So it's that sharpness of awareness, rather than being blacked out, pressed down, and suppressed, which oftentimes occurs in the interim of relationships with people, that in my viewpoint, it causes a lot of the trauma bond to remain very strong and have a real grip in many layers of a person's personality while they're in a relationship or trying to work their way out of this relationship. Or a lot of people, they're trying to also reclaim or recover this relationship and then try to pretend that it's not that bad, and then perpetuate this addiction to this person even more. So when it comes to how to spot a psychopath, you have to understand that these are individuals who can be hardened criminals. And if you look at that word hardened, it is oftentimes because there's a depletion, there's a lack of empathy, a lack of feeling. This is a very real characteristic within the psychopath population. However, they're hardened inside, but they put on a veneer, a persona, a surrogate, a facade that they are projecting into the world so that that hardened aspect is not showing. The steely look, the sort of, they feel as if there's just this, tension within this person. If you've seen sort of the mask crack, if you've seen a crack in the persona and you've seen sort of what's lurking underneath, like I would say any investigator who's worked, would say this is not a pleasant place for you to be. I mean, and words can barely describe it, but it's important to understand that oftentimes there's a reaction formation that occurs while someone is, involved with this type of person because they have not encountered this before. So they don't know how to deal with it, or they might not have good, thinking on their feet skills, which are really, truly important to spotting a psychopath. What do you look for? What are the telltale signs? I mean, everybody wants this as if they're going to have a name badge, this and this, so, one important thing is to, I would say, energetically, in my viewpoint, these people carry a different energy about them. There's something sticky. There's something dense. There's something quite not right. There's a little bit of skepticism and a little bit of sort of also outward expressive charm. In other words, the bigger than life personality that is, what they have created to create, a surrogate or persona for you to relate to, which is hiding what's underneath, which is someone who is unfeeling, who is calculating, who is deliberate, who unfortunately does not have the capacity to love. Love, that's a big statement. They don't have the ability. They can only mimic, and they are really excellent at mimicking. They really possess a very, very high level skill with which they can absorb information quite quickly. They can put this together in an amalgam of different speech patterns, persona management that they will engage in order to attract others through the dating scene, in the work scene, and it's just really like a bad act that they do. And it seems like, why would somebody go to that length? Why would they, do this with their resume or do this with their job, or, because there's something that they want. They also have a high propensity to boredom. So it's not like a lot of these individuals are just going to sit there and go nowhere. They feel that they have a gift. They feel that because they lack conscience, because they lack emotion, these silly little things that hold people back and stifle people's growth and getting what they want, they perceive others to be less than, stupid, naive, easy targets. And so they'll challenge themselves in order to target an individual. And finding those people, and oftentimes they might be attracted to other people who are psychopathic, and they'll play these very superficial games. If you've ever seen that, that is a very odd thing to behold. There are a lot of sectors of the employment market that are just rife with these types of personalities. Puzzling People, Thomas Sheridan talks about his experience in Wall Street and, that whole industry, as well as the music industry, just especially in the financial sector, it's very, very loaded with these personality types. They plot, they are deliberate, they know when to act. They don't have the emotions, they don't have the morality that most people would then have as part of their filter system for making choices, decisions, relationship, issues, relationship commitments, how they treat people, how they handle their work environment, and how they really go after whatever it is that they want without concern for consequences. So, for one, you have to realize that these people are oftentimes in specific industries. So you should, if you're going to learn how to spot someone who is psychopathic, you have to understand that they will also gravitate to specific industries, certain titles, certain high levels of achievement. And they tend to have this sort of, either, I would say, just sort of this bigger than life charisma, where you feel very drawn in and you feel that you've just encountered this star, or something of this nature. There's a star quality, that you might associate with this person. They might stand out. There's something energetically about them. If you've seen a movie star, there's this je ne sais quoi. There's something, that they're actors. They have a different chemistry. Their brain chemistry is different. So the chemistry that they have with life is very different from the rest of society, I would say. So there's something chemically different, and there's an alteration between what is going on with them and the rest of the people. So if you see people who, are kind of scouting out the room, it seems like they're surveying the scene. They're always sort of kind of in the observation mode, but there are these bigger than life people. They tend to, just be really observers. So things where people might be participating in the workplace or participating in the family, they tend to be sort of like as if they're just taking a step back and they're just observing. They're not feeling the situation. They're plotting. They're observing. They're learning. They're seeing how people connect. They're checking out their language. And, they're checking out how they talk, the types of words that they use, their facial expressions, their body language. All these speak volumes to someone who is psychopathic. So another really important aspect I would feel to identify one of these types of people is the sort of observative, standoff-like quality. Oftentimes, more than aloof, but just sort of very observational. And once you've been around it enough, you can see that there's a lack of presence with these people. You can't really feel them. Like you might say, oh, I feel you. I vibe with you. That's, like a saying, that people get, oh, I hear you. I feel you. I get it. You get me. And there's this feeling of kinship, like, yeah, my communication is received well and we're on point here. When you speak with a psychopath, there's oftentimes you feel that there's either this repetition of small phrases. They might not call you by your name. This can be kind of this distance or depersonalization in the way that they talk. And the way that they talk, I feel, can also be highly idiosyncratic, meaning there's an enigma, there's a puzzle, there's, psychopaths word salad, basically word salad, where they jumble up, some strange statements, and not just to be funny, but it's their way of communicating and their way of brainwashing and getting people hooked. So they'll say things that might be provocative, meaning evoking a sort of, what? What did you mean? What, this sort of provocative speech. Maybe hypersexualizing, yes, if you're in a relationship with them where they, you're getting to be into a romantic, there can be hypersexualization of objects, things, events, colors, shapes. Just everyday life becomes transformed in the mind of the person whom they're targeting, because they're preparing for this sort of taking over, really, of your thought process, which is organic to you, natural, arising from yourself, your I am, and your strength. They're going to dismantle this. They're going to dismantle this natural, organic thought process that you are who you are. And so this sort of standoffish, observing quality might be then turned around and twisted on you. I was admiring, how beautiful your eyes are, or I was just, admiring how, this and this about your hair, or I was admiring, da 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 about da da da. your muscles or whatever it is, they'll twist and turn it around, and then you'll feel that you've somehow won their heart, or you've won this special prize to be with them. So this standoffish quality, where there's no emotion, it's just sort of this blank. It can sometimes be very scary when you see it, or it can be very comforting for some people, because this then is like a place of stillness. It's a place to just be comforted, from the, are we in, are we out? This person just seems to, maybe they'll displace a lot of their calendar time, and you'll just see this sort of, they're just sort of not doing anything. They're just sort of in this haze, this psychopathic haze, where they're trying to suss out and scope, and then create a persona that specifically matches your needs. So really, this is something to be aware of. You can also spot, people who are violating of social norms, and it's not just to be funny, but it's because they do it because they don't have anything holding them back. So there's a sense of entitlement about them, where they can just do these things that people would normally not feel comfortable doing, but they will go to the extent. Also, someone who will break you down, meaning really tire you out, get you very exhausted, getting you to, alter your routine, sort of throw things off, throw you off kilter. It makes you more subjective, to their commands, and getting, into their lair, their trap. And unfortunately, because of the hard wiring and the physiology of these types of people, they don't really have people's best interest in mind. As part of it, you might have a lot to learn from these people. I mean, bottom line is, if you have encountered this, unequivocally, it's to teach you a lot, maybe some very serious lessons, but it's to teach you some lessons, if not a lesson, about yourself, about life, about people. So there can be this positive spin-off, but it's not something that you want to invite into your life, because ultimately these people don't have the best in mind for other people. They know just how to take people down behind the knee, behind the ear, behind the scenes, exploiting you, hurting your feelings, but to really severe degree. I mean, knowing things that would really upset you, and they act as if nothing happened, and they act as if they don't know you. So there's this feeling of on again, off again, hot and cold, where you feel that you're in and you're way in, and then they just kind of disappear, poof. And there's nothing, they don't have any sort of natural communication where you'd maybe want to talk about the topic, or you'd say, oh, that was such a great dinner, and then you'd want to, go out the next Friday. And oftentimes there's not a lot of relationship continuity, where they, normal growth, development within, I'm speaking a lot to couples and that sort of relationship, or even, in work, but work is really going to be more about the sabotaging and using people for their information, using them for their status, using them for their experience, associating with high-level people so they can pick up the knowledge quick, run with it, and then start interfacing with the higher-ups in the organization as if they just belong there. They assume, their positions, even if they don't have the requisite experience. They just will find they'll just go there. Wow, how do you do that? It's psychopathic, and you can feel that their energy also, to spot them, is very magnetic. You can almost feel it in a room, because people's body literally do have energy. There's energy that can emanate. If you've ever been around someone who's hectic and frantic, you can feel their energy. If you've ever been walking down, a dark alley, and you see, a character, you get the chills, you get the creeps, you get, a fear, your heart might start racing, something, about them makes you unsettled, and for good reason. You don't have to know everything, but your body knows before you know. So your body is oftentimes, that instinct is what the psychopath is going to try to sort of derail and then re-rail, decondition and then condition according to what and how they want you to think, feel, and behave. So there's this changing, I would say, if someone is sort of changing and adulterating how you feel about values. In other words, things that are good and wholesome and make you feel warm and fuzzy, all of a sudden those, aren't that important, that, you're trading all that for this one person and, your sanity. And, so for a lot of people, there's this gaping need, that they want distraction. They want to be dating. They want to have a companion at work. So there's a lot of these unmet needs which perpetuate and cause people to stuff down their own present, their own presence, their own awareness, which would go, whoop, better not relate to that person. There's something off there. So, for example, after you've done this, you'll be able to pick up and see people's patterns. You'll see how they will work an organization or work a room or work a family, where they're trying to, get everybody sort of, in their corner. They're just like a magnet trying to pick up people as if everybody's nails, and they're just trying to magnetically pick up as many people and associate with as many people as possible. You're like, really, you're doing this, and it just seems out of the ordinary. And so oftentimes, though, people are then distracted by their energy because they're trying to get information. They're trying to get a position. They're trying to get a date. They're trying to get data. They're trying to get contacts. They're trying to get resources. Whatever it is, and they can be highly parasitic. That is a whole nother topic where they just really, will go through a ton of relationships to get whatever it is that they want, even if it's just to belay boredom, a place to live, somebody to text, all sorts of motives, of course. And so number one, I would say it is when you are able to notice a change in your own energy when you're around these people. It can be fear or it can be delight, but you all of a sudden feel like you're losing it to this person. And so healthy relationships, they can be really satisfying, but I would say there's not this feeling of losing yourself, losing your values, losing your essence, your presence, your present moment reality. So being able to come into a peaceful, relaxed body is an important skill for you to be able to be aware and notice when these people are around. And it's not to say that you're going to encounter them all the time, but you do have to be aware that there are these types of individuals out there. It's just like education. It's education, human behavior, different types of people, different personality types. And this, verges on the very difficult person side. In fact, I would say really, as severe as it can get. But it's so difficult for a lot of people because there's this warm, cold, hot, cold, on, off sort of quality where it can be so good, but the reality is. It can be so euphoric, but the reality is. So the reality is truly your ally. The longer people are stuffing down or being naive or weak, really, when they're not able to discipline themselves in the relationship and say, OMG, that, this is going too far. I need to stop it now. So oftentimes they're already in this, brainwashed momentum where they can't put the brakes on how they feel. They can't, separate themselves from this individual. They can't pull themselves in their own perspective away, their own healthy perspective. They start getting a very, gaslit perspective, a very brainwashed perspective about themselves, about the relationship, about other things that they might share. So it's very important to regain distance and perspective, and to really hold dear what you feel is your moral compass. Because when you encounter these people, they don't have any morality. They don't have any, really, because of the inactivity in their amygdala and their prefrontal cortex. They just don't learn from relationship situations the way that the rest of society does. So you might have a big fight or, a big discussion, and then, you're still reeling or seething or hurt after it. And then, about half an hour later, they're totally unaffected. It's if, don't you just remember what happened? Can't you remember what you said? But yet they can remember their story that they told you. Oftentimes a lot of the lies that they told you, like, we're going to get married, we're going to do this, we're going to travel, we're going to have this car, we're going to have this family, we're going to do this business. They'll remember, and then they'll tell you, well, that's, it's not going to happen, right? I mean, and they'll just tell you with a very flat affect. So I would say also to spot them is this very flat affect, that they're not really sort of bothered, like the way a narcissist would kind of rage, if you challenge them, and they would act all disappointed and kind of throw themselves on the ground like a 2-year-old and yell at, this is not fair for me, like that. The psychopath just kind of it just doesn't hold any weight with them. They just will pick up and move on through a whole ton of relationships that most people would not have the ability to do. And I would even say they have, double and triple lives, meaning they've got this life over here, and then they've got another life over here, and sometimes another life, over there. They will just have, be married and affairs and single, and then, married, and then just all sorts of different things where you would say, how can one person handle all this? Well, someone who doesn't have, a conscience will do this. Someone who doesn't have remorse will do this. Somebody who doesn't have empathy will do this. Somebody who does not have feelings will do this. Someone who has an attachment disorder will do this. So, the key is to not be intimidated. Don't be afraid or disempowered by this. And, unequivocally come into a space of peaceful recognition and harmony and stillness and presence and awareness within yourself, where it's just like a complete joy just to be. A complete joy just to be. That state and that awareness is really something very precious and priceless, which oftentimes people work very hard to have, but it's at your fingertips all the time. People just don't check in and, have that gratitude space where they're able, so if you're kind of coming out of the relationship, you might still have a lot of this brainwashing and, these ruminating thoughts and very intrusive thoughts. And you still might have like a lot of dreams and this hyperarousal. I mean, there's people who get way out of character as a result of this psychological sort of rewiring that the psychopath is known to do in others, because they don't possess emotion. They don't really process abstracts like freedom, love, gratitude. It just is not in their emotional repertoire. So you'll see that there's a real distinct separation and real true difference between what Robert Hare would call the intraspecies predator and a warm-blooded, caring, empathetic, and compassionate human being. Embrace your humanity. And when you do that, you'll also be able to then identify and better protect yourself from someone who may be psychopathic. It's your buddy, Peace and Harmony, with you here today, and I hope that these videos do help. Please share and please subscribe for more great tools, videos, discussion, and support.